There's a woman named Danielle in Atlanta. She's 34 years old. She makes $96,000 a year, a number that, for most people, sounds like the finish line. She drives a leased Audi, lives in a two-bedroom apartment in Midtown, and every few months she and her girlfriends take a long weekend somewhere warm. Her Instagram looks like a travel magazine. Her LinkedIn says Senior Marketing Manager. Her life, from the outside, looks exactly the way you're supposed to want your life to look at 34. But here's what's actually happening. Danielle has $1,100 in her savings account. Not $11,000. Not $110,000. $1,100. She has a 401k she hasn't touched since she set it up at her last job. The contributions are set to 3%, the default her HR portal chose for her, and she's never changed it. She has $18,000 in credit card debt spread across 3 cards, all of which she is technically making the minimum payments on. Her car payment is $680 a month. Her rent is $2,300. She gets paid on the 15th and the last day of the month, and by the 12th, most of it is already gone. Danielle does not consider herself broke, and by every signal the culture sends her, she isn't. She earns nearly 6 figures. She pays her bills. She shows up. She is doing, by most external measures, everything right. On paper, she is successful. In reality, she is 3 missed paychecks from a genuine financial crisis. And Danielle is not an anomaly. According to a 2024 report from Empower, 59% of Americans earning between $75,000 and $100,000 a year describe themselves as living paycheck to paycheck. Read that again. More than half of the people earning in the top third of American incomes cannot absorb a financial emergency without going into debt. This video is about why, and more specifically, it's about what happens to people like Danielle over the next 25 years if nothing changes. If you're new here, subscribe to begin success. This channel exists for one reason: to show you exactly how money actually works, so you can stop guessing and start building. Hit subscribe and let's get into it. Here's the assumption most people are carrying right now: that income is the variable. That if you just earn enough, if you can get past some invisible threshold, some magic number where the stress finally stops and the math finally works, the financial problems solve themselves. It's the belief that's baked into every career conversation, every salary negotiation, every hustle culture post you've ever scrolled past. Make more money, fix your money. It sounds so logical that almost nobody stops to question it. But here's what the data actually shows. Earning more does not fix a broken relationship with money. It funds it. It scales it. It gives it more runway and more room to operate. And in most cases, it makes the underlying problems significantly harder to see, because the lifestyle upgrades that come with higher income feel like proof that things are going well. The Audi feels like a reward. The apartment feels like progress. The weekend trips feel earned. And technically, you can afford all of it. Until suddenly, at 45 or 55, you realize you can afford everything except security. This is not a theory. The Bureau of Economic Analysis tracks something called the personal savings rate, the percentage of disposable income that Americans actually save. In 2024, that number sat at 4.4%. For context, financial planners generally recommend saving between 15% and 20% of your income to build real long-term wealth. The average American is saving less than a third of that. And critically, that savings rate does not go up as income rises the way most people assume it does. The lifestyle expands with the paycheck. The gap stays exactly the same. There's a name for what's happening to Danielle and to millions of people who look exactly like her on paper. Economists and financial researchers call it the high-income poverty trap. It's the condition of earning well and accumulating nothing, of having strong cash flow and zero financial resilience. It's invisible from the outside, deeply uncomfortable to admit, and almost perfectly designed to get worse with time, not better, because every raise, every promotion, Every step up the career ladder brings with it a new set of expenses that feel proportional, feel justified, and quietly consume every dollar of the increase before it ever has a chance to compound. The assumption that income solves the problem is exactly why the problem survives. Because if you believe the raise will fix it, you never fix the behavior. And the behavior is the only thing that was ever actually broken. That's what this video is about. Let's look at what the numbers are actually saying from multiple directions, because this problem is bigger than any single statistic can capture. Start with the savings picture. A 2024 Bankrate survey found that 56% of Americans could not cover a $1,000 emergency expense from their savings alone. Not a catastrophic event, not a medical crisis or a job loss. $1,000. And this isn't a low-income story. The same survey found that nearly a third of households earning over $100,000 a year fell into the same category. The income went up. The financial cushion didn't. Now look at retirement, where the consequences of your 30s decisions become impossible to ignore. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the median retirement savings for Americans between the ages of 35 and 44 is just $45,000. The median, meaning half of people in that bracket have less. Financial planners generally recommend having 2 to 3 times your annual salary saved by 40. For someone earning $90,000, that's $180,000 to $270,000. The typical American in that age range has $45,000. That is not a small gap. That is a structural problem that compounds every single year it goes unaddressed. Here's a third angle: debt. The New York Federal Reserve reported that total household debt in the United States reached $17.5 trillion in 2024. Credit card balances alone hit $1.13 trillion, the highest figure ever recorded. And the people carrying the heaviest revolving balances are not the lowest earners. They are middle and upper middle income households, people with enough income to qualify for high credit limits and enough lifestyle pressure to fill them. Now combine all three data points, and a pattern becomes unmistakable. Low savings cushion, insufficient retirement balances, rising consumer debt. These three conditions are showing up together, consistently, across income brackets that should theoretically be immune to financial stress. This is not a poverty problem. It is a behavior problem wearing a high-income disguise. And here is the dimension that makes it specific to your 30s. A 2023 Vanguard study on retirement outcomes found that the single greatest predictor of retirement wealth was not investment returns, not income level, and not inheritance. It was the savings rate established between ages 30 and 40. The habits, the systems, the financial identity you build in that specific decade, those are what compound. Everything else is just arithmetic. The data is not ambiguous. Your 30s are not a rehearsal. They are the decade that sets the trajectory. So if the typical high earner is saving almost nothing, carrying significant debt, and heading toward retirement underprepared, what are people who actually build wealth doing differently? The research on actual millionaires tells a completely different story. Thomas Stanley spent decades studying wealthy Americans, not the ones who looked wealthy, but the ones who actually were. His research, compiled in the landmark study that became The Millionaire Next Door, surveyed over 1,000 individuals with a net worth of $1 million or more. What he found dismantled almost every cultural assumption about what wealth looks like from the outside. The majority of the millionaires in his study did not live in the most expensive neighborhoods. They did not drive the newest cars. They did not wear the most recognizable brands. They lived, in most cases, well below what their income could have supported. And that gap, the distance between what they could spend and what they actually spent, was not accidental. It was the strategy. Stanley introduced two categories that are worth burning into your memory. The first is the UAW, the underaccumulator of wealth. This is someone whose net worth is significantly lower than what it should be given their age and income. They earn well. They spend everything. They look successful. Danielle, from the opening of this video, is a UAW. The second is the PAW, the prodigious accumulator of wealth. This is someone whose net worth is significantly higher than expected for their income level. They often earn less than the UAW. They drive older cars, live in modest homes, and make financial decisions based on net worth targets rather than lifestyle signals. They are almost invisible in the culture because wealth that isn't being displayed doesn't register. Here is the finding that should stop you cold. Stanley's research found that UAWs and PAWs frequently had comparable incomes. The difference was not what they earned. It was what they kept, what they invested, and how early they started doing both. The PAW in their 30s was not living a worse life. They were building a different one, quietly and deliberately, while the UAW was funding a lifestyle that looked better on the surface and cost everything underneath. Your 30s are precisely when this fork in the road appears. The UAW path and the PAW path can look nearly identical from the outside at 34. By 60, they produce outcomes so different they are almost impossible to believe came from the same starting point. Here's what most financial content gets wrong. It treats this as a math problem. It assumes that if you show someone the numbers clearly enough, the compound interest charts, the retirement projections, the debt payoff calculators, the behavior will change. But if math were enough, the data from the last 3 sections wouldn't exist. People who earn $96,000 a year are not failing to do the arithmetic. They are failing to override something far more powerful than arithmetic. This is a psychology problem, and it operates through 3 specific mechanisms. The first is lifestyle inflation. This is the automatic, almost reflexive expansion of spending that follows every income increase. You get a raise and the apartment gets bigger. You land the promotion and the car gets newer. None of these decisions feel reckless in the moment. They feel proportional, they feel earned, and they feel like the natural next step. But lifestyle inflation is not a reward system. It is a trap that resets your financial baseline upward with every income increase, ensuring that no matter how much more you earn, the gap between income and savings stays exactly the same. The treadmill speeds up. You run faster. You stay in the same place. The second mechanism is the hedonic treadmill. Psychologists use this term to describe the human tendency to return to a baseline level of satisfaction regardless of what we acquire. The new apartment feels extraordinary for about 90 days. Then it is just the apartment. The new car smells good for a month. Then it is just the car. The lifestyle upgrade that felt like it would finally produce lasting contentment produces a temporary spike and then complete neutralization, leaving you at exactly the same emotional baseline, but now with higher fixed costs and less financial flexibility than before. The third is social comparison. Your spending is not happening in a vacuum. It is happening inside a social context that is constantly, silently broadcasting signals about what people at your level drive, where they live, where they eat, and what their vacations look like. And your brain, wired for tribal belonging long before it was wired for compound interest, is reading those signals and responding to them every single day. Keeping up is not vanity. It is neurology. But it is neurology that is actively working against your financial future. These 3 forces are not personality flaws. They are not signs of weakness or poor character. They are documented, well-researched psychological mechanisms that operate below the level of conscious decision-making. And in your 30s, when income is rising and social pressure is peaking, all 3 are running at full power simultaneously. That is why the math alone never fixes it. Let's get specific. Because the psychology explains why it happens, but the spending categories are where it actually happens. And when you lay them out side by side, the picture is uncomfortable. This is where the money goes. Housing. The standard financial guideline is to keep housing costs at or below 30% of gross income. But in most major American cities in 2024, the average renter earning $90,000 is spending closer to 38% to 42%. That's not irresponsibility. That's the market. But it means the single largest fixed cost in the budget is already consuming more than it should before a single discretionary dollar is spent. And because rent increases are normalized, most people absorb each annual increase without ever recalculating what it's doing to their savings capacity. Transportation. The average new car payment in 2024 hit $735 a month, according to Edmunds. Add insurance at roughly $180 a month, fuel, and maintenance, and the average American is spending between $1,100 and $1,300 a month on a depreciating asset that is doing nothing for their net worth. For someone earning $90,000, that is nearly 17% of gross income disappearing into a vehicle before they've saved a single dollar. Subscriptions and recurring charges. A 2024 study by C+R Research found that the average American spends $219 a month on subscription services and underestimates that figure by nearly 50% when asked to recall it. Streaming platforms, gym memberships, delivery services, software subscriptions, meal kits. Individually, none of them feel significant. Collectively, they constitute a fixed cost layer that most people have never actually audited. Food and lifestyle. The USDA estimates the average American spends between $800 and $1,200 a month on food when restaurant spending is included. In urban areas with a professional social circle, that number climbs higher. Work lunches, dinner with friends, weekend brunches, these are not extravagances. They are the social infrastructure of a professional life in your 30s. But they are also largely invisible in the monthly budget because they happen in small increments that never trigger a spending alarm. Now add it together. Housing at $2,300. Transportation at $1,200. Subscriptions at $220. Food and lifestyle at $1,000. That is $4,720 in fixed and semi-fixed monthly costs before a single dollar goes to savings, retirement, debt repayment, or anything else. On a $96,000 salary, take-home pay after taxes is roughly $5,800 a month. That leaves $1,080. This is what financial planners call the fixed cost trap. And this is where Danielle's $1,100 savings account comes from. Everything we've covered so far is qualitative. Now let's make it numerical. Because the real cost of the fixed cost trap is not what it takes from you this month. It's what it takes from you over the next 25 years. 2 scenarios. Same person, same income, same starting age of 35. Scenario A, the UAW path. This is Danielle's trajectory if nothing changes. She earns $96,000 a year. Her fixed cost trap leaves her approximately $1,080 a month after expenses. She contributes 3% to her 401k, $240 a month, because that's what the HR portal defaulted her to, and she's never changed it. The remaining $840 gets absorbed by the credit card minimum payments, the occasional emergency, the weekend trip, the Amazon purchase that felt small at the time. She saves, in any meaningful sense, almost nothing outside of her retirement contribution. At 3% contribution on $96,000, she is putting $2,880 a year into her 401k. Over 25 years, assuming a 7% average annual market return, that grows to approximately $193,000 by age 60. $193,000. After 25 years of working at nearly 6 figures. Scenario B, the PW path. Same person, same income, same age. But this version of Danielle restructures her fixed costs at 35, downsizes the apartment, drives a used car outright, audits the subscriptions, and frees up $1,500 a month to invest. She contributes 15% to her 401k, roughly $1,200 a month, and directs the remaining $300 into a Roth IRA, and a taxable brokerage account. Total monthly investment, $1,500. Over 25 years at the same 7% average annual return, that grows to approximately $1,216,000 by age 60. Read those two numbers side by side. $193,000 versus $1,216,000. The delta is over $1 million. Same income, same time period, same market. The only variable is the decision made at 35 about how much of the paycheck to keep versus how much to hand to the fixed cost trap. And here is what makes this truly difficult to sit with. The difference between scenario A and scenario B does not feel like $1 million in the moment. It feels like a slightly smaller apartment. It feels like a used car instead of a leased one. It feels like cooking at home more often than going out. The sacrifices are modest. The math behind them is not. This is why what you do with money in your 30s determines whether you're rich or broke at 60. The gap doesn't announce itself. It compounds silently. And by the time it's visible, it's already decided. So how do you actually get out? Because everything in this video up to this point has been diagnostic. The trap has been named. The psychology has been explained. The math has been proven. But a diagnosis without a prescription is just an uncomfortable conversation. So let's be direct about what the escape actually requires, and honest about the fact that it is not comfortable. The first uncomfortable choice is auditing your fixed costs ruthlessly and treating the result as non-negotiable. Not reviewing them, not being vaguely aware of them, auditing them. Every recurring charge, every lease, every subscription, and making deliberate decisions about which ones survive. This is the foundational move because no investment strategy, no savings habit, and no financial intention survives a fixed cost structure that consumes everything before the month ends. The second uncomfortable choice is decoupling your identity from your lifestyle. This is the hard one. Because in your 30s, what you drive, where you live, and where you eat are not just personal preferences. They are social signals that communicate status, success, and belonging to the people around you. Choosing the used car, the modest apartment, the home-cooked dinner feels like a statement. And it is. It's just a statement about net worth rather than appearance. And those two things, as Stanley's research made clear, are frequently moving in opposite directions. The third uncomfortable choice is raising your 401k contribution today. Not next review cycle. Not when the salary increases. Today. If you are currently at 3%, move it to 10%. If you are at 10%, move it to 15%. The math in the previous section was not hypothetical. Every month you delay is a month of compounding that cannot be recovered. The fourth uncomfortable choice is stopping the minimum payment cycle on your credit cards. Minimum payments are not debt repayment. They are debt preservation. The fixed cost trap cannot be broken while a significant percentage of your take-home pay is being redirected to interest charges every single month. None of these are radical. None of them require a dramatic income increase, a windfall, or a perfect moment to begin. But all of them require something that is genuinely rare, the willingness to make intentional choices rather than default ones. Because the fixed cost trap, the hedonic treadmill, the lifestyle inflation, the social comparison, none of those forces require your active participation. They run on autopilot. They are what happens when you don't decide. The question this video leaves you with is a simple one. At 60, do you want to look back at your 30s as the decade you lived for the appearance of wealth, or the decade you built the real thing? One of those versions of you is being decided right now. Not at 60. Now. If this video helped clarify something you've been feeling but couldn't name, subscribe to begin success. This is exactly what we do here.